Hello everybody, welcome to Chuck Fruit Uncorked. This is a Wine of the Week episode, and we're choosing the Edmeades Zinfandel Mendocino bottling because it's more readily available on more and more retail wine shelves, as per your request. And plus that, it greatly delivers. It's everything you would want from a Californian Zinfandel at a price of $14.99 a bottle, which I think is a steal. So, when I first had this wine is with the 2004 vintage. Then winemaker Van Williamson, we used to call him Vanimal, was this wild and woolly character out of the Western cowboy movies or hillbilly movies. He was just this mountain man, hunter, fisherman, just did things in a very gruff and like mountain man kind of way. And that's how he approached his grape growing and his winemaking. And when he wasn't making wines, he was hunting or he was fishing for salmon on his own boat, just coasting down the river, looking for steelhead. He's that kind of mountain man, a man of the countryside, for sure. So, with the 94 vintage, I went up to see him. And he had some single vineyard Zinfandels that I thought were spectacular. They were up in the Mendocino coastal ridge at 2,100 feet elevation, vertically remote. And when you look from a helicopter or an airplane, these were called islands of the sky because the vineyards were little peaks that poked up through the clouds and you could just see them, as opposed to be a contiguous appellation. It was just little pop-ups here and there. So it's referred to as islands of the sky, this appellation. His two most famous single vineyards was called Capucci and Zini. Capucci was 120 something year old vines and Zini was more like 80, 90 year old vines. And spectacular, these gnarly trunks that were up there. And I remember at one time when I saw Capucci for the first time, actually, it looked like Arlington. It looked like a graveyard, just sloping like this, and all these single trunks. It wasn't canopied, it was just single trunks, and it looked like the crosses at Arlington. It was just so spectacular, and it was so solemn and soulful. It's one of the most moving vineyards I've actually visited in all my trips to California. So, from these big hedonistic, powerful, wildly rustic Zinfandels, he came up with something that could be more readily drinkable, and it was the Mendocino bottling, which was a blend of many different old vine Zinfandels in the Mendocino County. I just distinctly remember one visit to Zini Ranch. Old man Zini at that time was 80 something years old, and he talked to Van like a grandfather would to his grandson under a big willow tree in the shade. And I was just so moved at how connected they were, how reverent they were to each other, how, they're passing on the wisdom from one generation to another, and the younger person giving some of his energy and some of his visions of modern ideas to the elder gentleman. Again, grandfather to grandson. And I remember old man Zini was standing there and he told Van that this vineyard was planted by the immigrants way back when. The European immigrants that would grow grapes up in these really isolated nooks and crannies, and then would harvest the grapes and take it down to their cellars down in San Francisco and make homemade wine. Homemade wine, especially during Prohibition, so they could make sure they had wine at their table, their dinner table specifically. So as he recanted, he couldn't afford the space or the time to have one wine for the red meat and one wine for the white meat. So what he chose to do instead was make a style, and it was Zinfandel based, that could go with the salmon and the fish, the trout, but also could go with the boar, the deer, the beef, the lamb, etc. Hence, that's where this style was born. So some people would say, well, it's just a Mendocino bottling. It's much more than that. It's a Zinfandel that has a bunch of old vines integrated in here, so it has vinosity, but it's more suave. It's not so hearty and robust like so many, or raisiny like so many of the Zinfandels out there. And I think it's delicious. I think it's suave. I think it's well textured. and it's all $14.99 a bottle. So I think it's a great buy. So look for it at your store, or go into a store, ask for it. The Edmeades Zinfandel Mendocino. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We look forward to seeing you next time. Aloha, everybody.